Hi there and welcome to November's Practice Clinic Facebook Live, and I am Graham Fitch, co-founder of the online academy. And what we do in this particular clinic monthly is readers send me in advance questions about practicing. I'm hoping to confine it more or less to practicing, but of course everything overlaps, so we can't really separate technique from practice. And actually I was thinking about what is technique, and a lot of times people think of it as just mechanics. What do we do physically at the keyboard when we play? But to me, technique is much more broad than that. It encompasses how we practice, how we listen, how we understand music. That's technique. And also style, how we interpret music from different style periods. That's all technique. So, you know, when I say it's a practice clinic, it does encompass everything. So if you are listening, watching, just please do press those buttons. We like the red heart ones, if you can bring yourself to push that. I can see Estella's there. My camera is a little further back than normal today because I need people to see the extremes of the keyboard a bit more than normal. So that's why I'm leaning forward and peering at my keyboard, my phone. So why don't we get started straight away with a question from Betty, who tells us that she's in the process of relearning Chopin's Prelude Opus 28 number 4. That's this one. One of the saddest pieces, short pieces of Chopin. Betty goes on to say, I am accumulating too much tension in my left hand while playing the repeated chords and haven't been able to figure out how to play with a more relaxed hand. Two things are happening. As I progress, the notes of the chord don't sound together and voicing falls apart, and by the end of the piece I'm in pain. Well, that's terrible, Betty. Let's see if I can help you a little bit with alarm bells always ring for me when somebody says they're in pain, because there's a certain amount that we can do from a distance like this, but I would really recommend that you go and find a teacher who specializes in rehabilitating pianists, and there are a number of them. You can just research that, because it would be slightly unethical for me to think that I can fix your problem like this from a distance without knowing you. But I can give you just a few general points about this particular prelude, the left hand. Now what Chopin does here, it's like quicksand. He starts off on an E minor chord in its first inversion, and then he moves the bottom two notes down, then the top note down, then the bottom note, now the top, now the middle moves down. So shifting sands, it's very slippery. And above that, we've got this kind of wailing going on. We've got this long note, and then the fourth beat pulls against the harmony, and that's why we put the stress on the little note, the crotchet or the quarter note, rather than on the long note. And actually there's another reason we do this. If I play a note strongly on the piano, we become very aware of its decay, right? If I play a note softer, we are more aware of its sustain. So if I want to create a line here, I play the long notes somewhat softer and the short notes stronger. And what we get is slightly counterintuitive, because you'd think the longer note, the more weight we'd need to give it, so it would ring. But in this particular instance, it works the other way around. So if you're playing this piece, try giving a little bit more weight to the quarter notes, the crotchets, and lighten off a little bit on the dotted minims or the dotted half notes. But to get back to Betty's situation here, there are, to me, several ingredients in this. One is, you know, when we're playing the piano, sometimes we need a very free and flexible wrist. If this piece was slower, we might want to do it that way. But in this particular instance, I would keep my wrist very much part of my arm. In other words, not bending, not moving up and down. But what I am sensing is that I am inside my key, not on the top going down each time. So it's not this, but it's inside the key. If you're playing on a grand piano, you shouldn't have to lift the keys all the way back up. Now, okay, there's a situation called key bedding, which is what we want to steer clear of, like the plague. That's when we push against the bottom of the key when we sense that we've arrived there. If I carry on pushing, then I'm going to build up tension very, very soon. So it's a question of responding to the key bed. I'm on the key bed. It's also a question of noticing the fingers that aren't playing. So that if let's say I'm playing 1, 3, 5, and my second finger is pointing up like this, or curling under, that is like a tug of war that's going on my hand. These fingers want to go down, and this finger says, no, I'm going up, either this way or that way. So we do need to pay attention to the fingers that are not playing. So if I play that with 1, 2, 4, I've got to ask myself, what's happening in fingers 3 and 5? When I play the next chord, 1, 3, 5, I'm asking myself, what's happening in finger 2? It should just be loosely on the keyboard, not curling up, not poking up to the ceiling. The other thing, a very important thing about chord playing when we're moving like this from one position to the next. For example, here, that chord. We want to, at all costs, avoid twisting the wrist. If you just try this experiment, you can do this at home. Just have your hand straight, level, and move your fingers, and you can move them very freely. If you turn your hand to one side, twist, these fingers feel very sluggish. So that's tension that we don't want. So if let's say I'm playing this chord, let me find one. This is a good candidate. So I'm playing an E, A, and with my pinky finger, I'm playing an F sharp. So I want them to be further in other words, not this position. Do you see if I do that position, I'm twisting. But that position means that my thumb is closer to the edge of the white key, and my fifth finger is maybe 1/3 of the way along my black key. Rather than that position, I've got this position. So that avoids the twist at the wrist. Those are some things. Other things you can do for practice, Betty, and we did do something on this prelude once before, so it is somewhere in the archives. I've got in front of me the Alfred Cortot edition, which has many wonderful things in it by way of practice suggestions. It also has some rather dangerous things in it. So it really is a question of filtering out anything that's stretchy, or yes, and particularly the stretchy ones where he expects big stretches in the practice. But there are some wonderful things in there as well. So it's just a question of being discerning when you use the Cortot edition. He's got an exercise here where he suggests that two fingers stay silently on their keys, and we play the other fingers. So in other words, 2 and 4 are touching the keyboard but not playing, and I'm playing the thumb. Now that's certainly a possibility. I prefer to do it the other way around by holding down all fingers and then releasing the thumb. Now let me try that with my middle finger, and now my 4th finger, and now maybe I can do 1 and 4, and now I can perhaps do 1 and 2, and all the time I'm checking in with my wrist to make sure my wrist is not tightening up. Now when I say firm wrist, I don't mean a tight wrist. I'm just saying we won't have any control if we do this sort of stuff. The chords will split, and I won't have any control over my voicing. So firm in the wrist, but not tight, very close to the key, and be aware when you play that you're not using twisting movements. See if you can find a position on the keyboard when you've got short fingers on black keys that avoids the twist. So some thoughts there. The next question comes from Joel, who's been playing Debussy's Clair de Lune on and off for several years. There are 2 spots he finds uncontrollable. In bar 27, the pedal is very messy here as I try to hold on to the melody notes and it just feels awkward to play. So bar 27 is here. Let me just play it slowly for you. Should be a little quicker than that. So a lot of people come unstuck here because they're not recognizing that we've got two different harmonies on the first part of the bar. D flat major, F minor. We need a change of pedal here. That's essential, otherwise we get a kind of squishy, rather nasty effect. But we've also got to hold on to these two notes. These I hear them as a pair of clarinets. So the fingering that I like to use is 5 and 3 on the top here, and then when I play the second beat I can change my pedal. Now rather than play the A flat with my right hand, it's written in the treble stave, rather than play that with my right hand, I can simply come across and let the left hand take it. Do you see what I'm doing there? Which means my right hand can stay in position. And similarly here, come over with a 2, change, come over. So it's a matter of rejigging the fingering a little bit to make it comfortable, to avoid the stretches and the releases, too many releases in the right hand. Experiment with that, Joel, and see if that helps you. So just to recap, 5 and 3. Change pedal, let the left hand play this A flat. 1, 2, 5 and 3 again. 2 in the left hand, and I like 1 and 5, 3. Then release my hand to come back to the 5 and 3. That releasing of the hand is very, very necessary because we find it at the end of a phrase. Now, in French music, oftentimes phrases end at the end of the bar rather than on the beginning. If you think of the French language, often it goes up and at the end, whereas the Germanic language, ba-dum, 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 is stressed heavy downbeat. So here what we would do, rather than try and do this, getting there quickly, I just make a little aspiration, a little tiny comma, and start the new phrase on the long note. That's a main difference between German music or Germanic music and French music. The next part Joel is struggling with is bar 37. Yes, this is a horrible thing. The left hand always feels uncoordinated and lumpy, so instead of moving the tempo forwards, I find myself needing to slow down to get all the notes. Joel then says, thanks in advance for your help. Well, the fingering that's normally given for this, let me see if I can do it with this fingering. That's the awkward one. So just to go through the positions here, we've got this position, and this position. Now if you are going to use that fingering, just be aware, that's 5, 4, 5 and 4, and then 3, 2, 1. Just be aware that you do not have to hold on to that quarter note, that crotchet at the bottom, but you can release the chords one by one as you come round. Do you see how I'm closing up my hand as I come round? And let the pedal do that job. Similarly here, close the hand, and here. So that may be all you need, Joel, to make that work. But you could also, there's an alternative fingering that I sometimes show people, and some people love it, other people hate it, or rather don't get along with it, I should say, which is to come over to do this 5 and 3, 2, 1, 2, and just to come over. So that's another option. Do you see what I'm doing there? I'm pivoting over my thumb, going back to the 5 and 3, pivoting over my thumb and ending up with the second finger. And that avoids the stretches that people complain about with this particular passage. One other thought that I had as I was noodling around with this was to see what it felt like to let the right hand take the top notes. Oh no, G sharp. And that may also work. It's always worth exploring. You know, when you've got something that really doesn't feel comfortable, ask yourself, is the given fingering the only possibility for fingering? You could go on to IMSLP, the Petrucci Library, have a look at other editions to see if another editor perhaps has a different idea. But certainly experiment yourself and see, maybe I could change the fingering to something a little less stretchy. Maybe the other hand could help a little bit. Redistribution, it's absolutely fine to redistribute as long as you do it discreetly. So those would be my thoughts there, Joel. Okay, now this is a lovely edition that I have of I picked it up in New York many years ago. It's Masterclasses in Debussy, edited by Daniel Ericourt, and it's got lots of good pedaling and good fingering, and also here's the reverie, a nice description here of the structure and the content, and people find the pedaling helpful because of course Debussy didn't really leave us pedaling, and we don't tend to find too many fingerings in his music, so I'm not sure if you can still get it, but it's a very neat addition. Brian is playing the Mendelssohn Scherzo in E minor. I'm working on the Scherzo from the Opus 16 set, but can't seem to find the necessary lightness and speed. My fingers feel like lead, oh dear, resulting in playing that's too loud, plus there are too many wrong notes for my comfort. Any help you can offer would be much appreciated. This is a very beautiful set of 3 pieces by Mendelssohn, starting off with, I've forgotten, let me just go remind myself, I used to play these. The three fantasies or caprices. The first one is just marked andante, and then you've got a scherzo, and then you've got a piece called the rivulet, a little stream, right? And the scherzo is Mendelssohn in his elfin mood, light and, you know, Midsummer Night's Dream type of sounds. So I'm assuming the bit that you're meaning here, Brian, is the we've got an introduction. Now here you can let the left hand, and I'm using 3-2-1, and I'm playing the repeated notes like a ricochet. If you've ever thrown a stone, skimmed a stone across the surface of the water, you enjoy seeing the bounce. So there's the rebound. Now the bit that I assume Brian's probably struggling with is oops, sorry, let me do that again. This bit. Something along those lines. That was not the best demonstration, but you get the idea. Hopefully I'll improve a little bit as I practice it now. What I'm doing, first thing, I'm redistributing. So instead of the right hand playing the repeated Bs, I'm letting the left hand play that, because it gives me a little bit more opportunity to voice this melodic top. This is much too slow, but the touch that I'm exploring here is one of plucking. It's a finger staccato, or a pizzicato, if you will. So let me just show you the way that I would practice this, and then I'll explain a little bit as I go along what I'm doing. Starting with my fingers on the keyboard, and you can see there's one motion from the tip of the finger. It doesn't involve the arm, it doesn't involve the wrist, it's just the tip of the finger. And I'm plucking the chord out of the keyboard as short as I can get it. Now, one thing very, very, very important, it's crucial, that having plucked the key, you return to a state of looseness, because there's a little bit of effort involved in that. So if I didn't release that effort, I'd hang on to it. So it goes immediately free. And immediately I'm on the next position. I've flown to the next hand position. Can you see how fast I'm getting? Actually, what happens is the release of the one pizzicato takes me to the surface of the next one. So it's a slow tempo, but incredibly quick movements, prestissimo movements. And it feels very controlled and feels very loose in between. And then when that's... That's slightly better, it's coming back to me now. The repeated note here, keep it inside the key. Don't make any big movements there, but you can, and I find this very helpful for repeated notes, it's just to move in and out. So I'm vibrating my wrist, I'm not making big movements with my wrist, but I'm vibrating my wrist and just moving in and out from the front of the key to a millimeter in and back, and that keeps me very close. The left hand here similarly, very much from the tip of the finger. It's occasionally good practice to play legato a line like that. Why? Well, if I play staccato, I could lose the shape of the line, the shaping of the line. In other words, how the contours of the line could work. So that when I come back to the staccato, I can give it that same shaping, the same contours. So, just to recap, ultra slow tempo, ultra fast movements of the tips of the fingers, moving from one position to the next like lightning, should help you there. Now, Linda has given me a challenge. Linda says, I need help with playing jumps to the high D sharp in multiple passages in Liszt's La Campanella. This is one of his most famous, most charming studies. The note is supposed to sound, it's this D sharp up here. It's supposed to sound like a bell, but it's an embellishment, not part of the melody. True. I'm having problems playing the note evenly, especially with 2-octave jumps. Yeah, because we have to get... I could do that better. You see there, there's a lot of speed there in the arm. Sometimes the note is too loud, that one. Other times I miss it entirely, hitting the wrong note. And other times I play it too softly. And then Linda's given me a few spots to look at, because we've only got time to do one spot, really, and it'll apply. I'm just going to take the very opening where the tune starts. Now, the tune is kind of naive, or rather folky. Now, that is, of course, a very, very good thing to practice, just playing the thumb line against the left hand, maybe with a little bit more pedal if you like pedal. Now, you'll notice there, hopefully, that I was giving that line shape, contour. So I'm finding where the important notes are, I'm finding where the softer notes are, I'm finding where I might want to breathe, little moments of time perhaps. Maybe I'd need a breath there, or if I were playing on a violin, a change of bow. A little microsecond of time, and all of these little moments help us because we're focused, rather than on the technical difficulty of the jump, we're focusing on what the music really is doing, which is creating a kind of line with a bell at the top. And the line has to be musically interesting. It can't just be a bunch of notes, and it can't just be a gymnastic exercise. That's what makes it so incredible, this piece. The tune itself is artless in a way, but the setting, what Liszt does with this is just genius, the most incredible sound. So, you know, as I was preparing this for today's clinic, I was investigating the angle of the fifth finger on the black key. Now, if I were to play that particular black key from this sitting position, I would play on the diagonal. If I play the D sharp here in this octave, I would still want, most of the time, to use a diagonal approach. So if you can see, that's a key, that's my pinky. So rather than go square on, with the risk of slipping off, I go diagonally, either that way or that way. What that enables me to do is first of all, to move less. These distances are, whoops, rather than coming square onto the key. So I've got the added advantage of needing to make a smaller movement, but also a more accurate landing on the D sharp, because I've got a greater surface area of my finger that's connecting to that key. Now, I was also looking at where my eyes were when I played this, and it's fatal to have your eye on that D sharp. Don't be looking at that D sharp. You have to get very used to referring back to the D sharp, pinky D sharp, without looking. Right, now what you could do, just for preliminary practice, or just once in a while, even once you know the piece, is to take the skill from here and convert it to, or apply it rather, to a scale. And I'm just going to use a chromatic scale. So far so good. There we go, I made it. It's always a bit scary doing that sort of thing on one of these live things. What I did was to look at my thumb and to trust that my body knows the distance up to the D sharp. Now, of course, what we have to play here is not a chromatic scale, it's a little tune. Well, that would be the left pinky there. But it gives us at least a start with gauging distance. So, you know, you might even want to do that with your left hand. The next thing I discover as I play this passage is that my thumb needs to be pretty firm, because I need to propel my arm off of my thumb. If my thumb is floppy, I'm not going to be able to move anywhere. So a springboard from my thumb to the pinky. See, and then I can really get up to that D accurately and freely. Freedom, that's the other word. If we've got any tension in our arm or in our hand, we are dead. We will not be able to get through even a bar of this, let alone the whole etude. So it's very important to focus on the freedom of the arm as you work on this. Don't forget that anxiety, which is mental tension, will cause physical tension. So if you're worried about the jump, the chances are muscularly you're going to tighten up, and then it's a self-fulfilling prophecy. You will find that you're inaccurate. In terms of practice, what I would strongly recommend is getting from, let me just demonstrate it, getting from the thumb to the pinky immediately. See what I'm doing there? I'm throwing, papa, just a bounce, ricochet. Now, the same thing with the top. wasn't ready. This is difficult. Let me do it again. Not bad, not bad. I'm not practicing this piece at the moment, but if I were practicing this piece, this is exactly what I'd do. And then I might link together, and then... Whoops! You see the challenges in this right hand. Those are some of the things. You could do a little chain and then a bigger chain. Technically, there are several. There's a few things that I would mention. Well, if I were just to play this octave by itself as a tremolo, I would be inclined to use a rotary movement, which I feel as I'm doing that as well. So even though there's a jump, there's a rotation in the forearm that gets me from one place to the next. There are some places where I feel that it's more of a circle. I don't know if you can see what I'm doing there. Let me describe it. I would actually practice both ways, with the rotations pure and then with the circle. Now the circle, if I do it exaggeratedly, looks like this. Can you see what happens on the pinky note? As I get to the pinky, I'm coming up and round. And again, that propulsion takes me wherever I want to go on the keyboard, because I'm using this as a springboard to get down to there. Without seeing you, Linda, and without, observing and what it is you're doing, I wouldn't be able to say exactly why you're missing those D sharps, but hopefully in that whole spiel there was something that was at least food for thought and food for exploration. So hopefully that'll have given you some ideas. That's the end of the practice clinic. Thank you so much for being here and for your presence and questions. And I will be back again in December for the next practice clinic. So see you then. Thanks for watching.